This is Sally Morgan, PT, CST, also my aunt, also Dr. Judy's sister. So we're very happy for us to host her this morning. And we're going beyond positive reinforcement training this morning. I'm going to introduce you to Sally Morgan for those of you that haven't gotten a chance to hear her speak on this topic before. She's a graduate of the University of Heartworm's program in physical therapy. That's the PT. And she has been a Tellington T-Touch method practitioner for over 30 years at the highest level for horses, companion animals, and also people. She is a Upledger Institute certified as a craniosacral therapist, instructor, presenter, and practitioner. Sally has training in myofascial release, manual lymphatic drainage, strain, counter strain, brain speaks, bioaquatics, and craniosacral therapy to the most advanced levels for humans and animals. She's developed the equine craniosacral curriculum. She's a pioneer in the field of small animal craniosacral work and has been practicing and teaching in this field for over 20 years. You also offer emotion code work for animals and people, and you are one of the few in the world doing this work. You're an innovator in the field of vibrational therapy using tuning forks for orthopedic intervention and certified in third-degree Reiki and a master Reiki teacher. So you have a lot of experience when it comes to both physical therapy, craniosacral therapy, T-Touch. And when we were talking about training, you said, well, there's actually a step above positive reinforcement training. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Gwen. It's great to see you, even if you're just a speck on the computer and the phone. And Tristan says, hi, Aunt Gwen. I'm so happy that you asked me to speak on this subject because it's something I feel passionately about. And when we talk about dog training, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, why do we have a dog? Why do we have dogs? Do we have them because we want to win titles and go to the championships and fastest dog in America or the top agility dog? That's not why we have dogs. Even people who have those things don't have dogs to win stuff. We have dogs because we love them. They are great companions. They are part of our lives. There is hardly a person with a dog who would not say, my dog is my best friend. That is why we train dogs. We are actually training them to learn how to live with us. Because if a dog was left to its own devices, as we've seen anytime we've had a puppy, all kinds of things run amok. We're eating the coffee table legs. We're peeing wherever we want. We're eating stuff we're not supposed to eat. And so training is really teaching our dogs how to live in our world. I think when we go beyond just like basic house companionship learning, that it behooves us to try to reach out to the dogs and do things with them in a way that is really fun for them, because they have really literally given their lives to live with us in the way that we live with animals. We should do everything we can to make their lives great.
I do agree. I have two dogs that I love very much, although none of mine have jobs, and your dogs actually have jobs.
Yeah. When you have dogs, people pick a breed, and right now, the most popular dog in America announced yesterday, French bulldogs. Hardly anyone who has them knows what they were made to do. A friend of mine, who's a friend of Judy's, who breeds them, actually told me that they were meant to sit on the ladies' laps to collect the fleas and keep them warm while they were sewing in the factories in France in like the 1800s. So how many of us are doing that with a French bulldog? But they are really good companion dogs to sit around. I love the herding breeds. Herding breeds are meant to work. Dogs need jobs. Dogs that I have, and border collies and shelties and collies and all of the herding breeds need a job. If you don't give them a job, they'll just find something else to do. And honestly, I'm starting to believe, the more I work with all kinds of little dogs, that every dog needs some kind of a job, even if it's not the job they were meant to. Like a lot of dachshunds are really busy, little barky, troubled dogs because they don't have enough to do. I have one dachshund client who's a gem, and it's because her mother has told her in no uncertain terms, your job is to be my companion and I'm your companion. That dog does not bark and doesn't do all the million things that some unmannered dachshunds I know might be doing. It's really important that we try to be true to the spirit of what the dog was made to do, and not just get, some kind of a dog like a Shih Tzu because we think they're cute and then think that we're going to go hiking 75 miles with them a week. A Shih Tzu can't do that. That is way too much walking for a little dog. Why did you overlook the pointers, the Weimaraner framers, the Doberman that might have wanted to do that with you. Really, it gets back to picking the dog that's the right dog for you. I don't have a little kid like Gwen does, so I have plenty of time and energy to spend with my dogs doing stuff they need and like to do.
So I guess could you start by just explaining what the terms like positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement mean traditionally in training? And then you say you kind of take that a step further. So if we could dig into that as well.
Sure. So positive training, all of us have heard that's been a buzzword for about 30, 40 years. And positive training just means that you're rewarding the behavior you want from the dog. And that reward can be food, it can be a toy, it can be a little bit of playing. A lot of agility people, the dog will go down a line of 2 jumps a tunnel and then come over and get a toy and they play tug with it and throw it around and the border collie's going nuts and he's so happy. So that can be the reward. A wonderful guy I love named Brian Hare, who's now at Duke, has done studies, dogs that learned how to put their chin in a little thing so that you could do an MRI of them while they were responding to different things like food and people's voices. He found out that the parts of the brain that make you happy light up the most when the dog was hearing his person just speak to him and say, "Oh, Fluffy, I love you. Where's my little Fluffy?" That's when the dog was the happiest. You could hold up a really good treat and, the dog was pretty happy, but not the same. And you have treat and mommy's voice, and that's the happiest of the dog. When we're doing positive reinforcement, people sometimes forget. They just clicker train. The dog does a sit when they say sit, and they click and they give them a treat. It's also important to remember to add in the good job. That's great. I love that you did that for me. That's what the hallmark of positive training is. You reward the dog when he does what you want him to do. Now, there's a lot of controversy because people say, oh, this doesn't work with a really reactive dog. Well, we have to go into what a reactive dog is to look at that further. But first, what's negative training? Negative is punishment. When the dog is doing what we don't want it to do. So now all our focus is on what they're doing that we don't like. As before, we were on everything they do that we do like. You're doing something really negative and horrible to the dog when they're like hitting them when they're barking at the window. You know what? If you have a Doberman, it's a guard breed, and they're barking at the mailman, you should say, "Good job, come over here, thank you," instead of smacking him on the nose and saying, "Don't bark," because you're going against the breed, but now you're doing negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement doesn't work, especially with a reactive dog. For instance, one of my friends has a little corgi he shows in obedience training, and obedience training is very different than having your dog sit down and stay when you tell it. There's a lot more to it. They have to heel like really close to your heel. They have a thing called foraging where the dog squirts ahead of you a little bit and pulls on the leash. And he works with a very old-fashioned trainer who instructs him to yank the leash and pull the dog back. Now, this dog is already a little bit afraid of things. He comes from a very rough early start in life. It's making him afraid to heel because every time he's healing, now he goes out in front and he gets yanked back. So that is negative reinforcement, and it's making the dog not want to heel at all. So he's gone back to a different trainer where he's getting treats every 5 seconds and he's telling him good dog and he's rewarding him for being next to his heel when he's healing, and that works way better. People think that when you have a reactive dog, the only way to stop it is to like pounce on it. And this whole idea of dominance training, which came from some very poor research with wolves, where we were looking at the hierarchy in a pack. A guy named David Misch studied these wolves way back long ago. There was a movie called Don't Cry Wolf or Never Cry Wolf. And he went and lived with wolves in Alaska and Michigan and studied them. And he realized years later that his research was really flawed. There was not an alpha male in charge of everything. That would be way too stressful for one wolf to manage. They would die. They need to cooperate. They're pack species. Our dogs come from wolves. And he found out that the quote alpha female and the alpha male and all of the wolves in the pack have jobs, and no job is less important than another. One of the things that was brought to his attention was the wolf that was the little jokester in the pack. Like when things were getting tense and they were all fighting over a new kill, this little guy would roll on his back and be all cute and stuff. When that one got killed, the whole pack fell apart. So the one that seemed like the most, meager in the group actually was holding the group together. That shows us a couple of things. One is no one thing is higher than another, and all jobs are equal. So if we pounce on a dog that's aggressively barking at another dog and, try to quote dominate him or, be the boss, that dog is not learning anything. Plus, we're screwing up the dynamic of why we had the dog in the first place. We want our dogs to be our buddies. Now, am I going to pounce on Gwen and shake her when she gets a bad grade in school? No, that's not going to help her learn. And why would I do that same thing to a dog? So we have to look at why dogs are reactive. It comes from fear. In every case, it comes from fear. Now, this can be fear from something they remember in the past, or it can be from fear in a current situation. And there's 5 possible results of fear, and they all start with F. That's how we remember that in the T-touch land. Fight or flight, that's where you get the reactive dog barking at the end of his leash, or the timid dog hiding. A lot of actually Dobermans are like this. When they're nervous, they want to hide, and they're a big dog. They will crawl behind the sofa like nobody's business. Fidgeting, so we have fight, flight, fidget. Fidget's where they're like biting the leash and they're circling and they're wagging and they're drooling and their mouth is open and they don't know what to do with themselves because they're so nervous in the situation. Some dogs, when they're really, really scared, faint. Linda Tellington has only seen a few dogs do this. I've seen maybe 2 in all of my career. And then the last F is freeze. And that's where the dog just stands stock still. And out of that freeze, they can do fight, flight, faint, or fidget. But when they're in that freeze, it's really hard to reach them. And that's when they can be quite dangerous. We have learned with T-touch that clicker training, for instance, when we try to get a horse in a trailer and he's afraid, you can click them and they'll walk up one step, but they get to that point halfway in the trailer when they don't want to go. And no amount of clicker training, and as anybody that's got a horse can tell you, no grain, that's not going to get them in. What you need to do is teach them about what they're afraid of so that it is no longer fearful. I've had many rides in horse trailers with the whole thing rattling and shaking, and I'm like, no wonder this pony doesn't want to go in this person's trailer. And so once they see that he doesn't want to go in and they can fix up the trailer or get a new one, they can understand. And then after that, the pony goes in no problem without us really doing a lot. With T-touch, we've learned to use positive training with those reactive dogs, and we've had really good success. I always go back to the example. I was at a horse training seminar once, and the guy, a cowboy, and this really was the only good thing that came out of that lecture. He said, fear is a big thing with horses. They're prey animals. So what do we do when a horse is afraid, And so we brought that to the audience, and he said, what would I need to do if this entire ring was full of snakes to get you to walk across this field of snakes? Now, I'm personally terrified of snakes. And I thought, you know what? No amount of this dude saying, it's okay, come with me, girl, is going to make me do this. And I really had a feel for those horses that don't want to walk across water, or dogs who are afraid when they're in a big, noisy, convention center and they're just timidly cowering behind their person. And I thought about it for a while, and I realized what I would need would be my friend Tracy. She's a shaman, a T-touch practitioner. If she said to me, it's okay, I will protect you and you stay close to me. And because I know that she has a way with snakes and she's a shaman, I know that she could say to them, be calm, stay away from Sally. She's really scared. We're going to walk across here. It's going to be okay. And as long as I was right close to Tracy and I knew that she had control over the situation, I knew I could do it. Not with any other situation. So think about that compared to our dogs. Just saying, Fluffy, it's okay. It's not okay. Fluffy's telling you 100 reasons why it's not okay. So is dragging him on the leash into the ring going to be the right thing to do? Or if he's growling and snarking at a big dog staring at him because they're in that freeze mode and Fluffy's a little chihuahua, is saying, Fluffy, it's okay, going to help him? No, he knows that dog could eat him in a second. Plus, the other thing going on are all the signals from that big dog that we don't see, that the little dog sees, and the smells and the things like that. With T-touch, what we do in that situation, you always get them to redirect. So you turn them to look a little bit away. If you get the person with the big dog to turn their dog away, that's even better. And then we have the miracle of the circular T-touches, which changes the pattern of brain waves into a calmer state. So we're doing T-touches on our little dog. We change our breath. Many times when you have a reactive dog, you're so scared you're going to get sued and the dog's going to eat somebody's leg that you get, so you need to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth and do those circles on your dog and change how you're looking, make your gaze soft, change everything. Doing these things, which are all, positive in a way, but more gaining that cooperation that we're going to talk about in a minute, we can take a really aggressive dog and a really reactive dog and get them in a place where they're thinking, because reactivity is not thinking. It's like the person who had a cat that I worked with. She would put her hand out. Anybody sat a cat will know this. And the cat would immediately start clawing at her hand and biting her hand really viciously. She'd pull her hand away and the cat would stop. She'd put her hand back, cat's biting, pulled her hand. So the cat thought this was a game. Bite, 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 bite. That person has kind of trained that kitty to be kind of vicious. And the same thing can happen with our dogs when we're so nervous about what they're going to do when they see another dog. We really have to retrain ourselves to take deep breaths, get calm, turn in a circle, go the other direction so we're not walking up to the dog that our dog's scared of, or whatever it is. It could be anything. Just change the whole situation. And that's how T-Touch has taken these reactive dogs and really helped them. We put them in a labyrinth, which is a little maze we make out of poles or brooms or leashes or even chalk on the driveway. And it changes what's happening in the brain. It gets both hemispheres activated equally in all of the brainwave patterns. So you've got the logical side of the brain working, relaxation working, the retention so that we can remember this. And then we've got the delta waves, which are sleep waves. And if we don't have those theta, relaxation, and recall waves activated, we can't learn. And my example is always my calculus teacher. He'd make us go to the board. Thank God he retired before Gwen was in calculus. He would go to the board and make you do a problem. And if you were getting things wrong, he's throwing chalk at you. He's calling you names. He's saying, oh, Sally can't add 5 + 3. Oh my God, I never thought division was subtraction. And worse things. What do I remember about calculus? Like this much. When I had a really great physics teacher, totally opposite experience. I have been very good at physics ever since. So I know that you need relaxation to learn. If you're doing negative reinforcement, the dog cannot relax because he doesn't really understand what you're asking. And so he doesn't know when the bad thing's going to happen. With positive training, we're in a whole other realm of, rewarding the dog for what we want. But the timing of those rewards has to be really precise. Having worked with now probably 5 really top dog trainers, I have lots of mistakes. And I am so grateful to people that can see these tiny mistakes because it changes what your dog is doing. And my dog is reading me perfectly every time. He's doing exactly what I'm asking, but I'm not asking right. And how many of us training dogs ever think, oh my God, did I ask that correctly? Just even the other day, my little baby corgi was at a place we were doing agility. They had 3 jumps in a row, and then off to the right was a tunnel. It was really simple little thing. He kept going, jump, jump, right turn to the tunnel. And I'm like, there's 3 jumps in a row. What is this problem? My feet. I was turning to the tunnel already, anticipating him hurrying down and coming back to the tunnel, and I was going to be ready to go the other way. He watches my feet. Dogs always watch your feet when you're doing agility. I had to say, what am I doing wrong? What would Betty say, who's my trainer? And I was like, where are my feet pointing? I went in, I did nothing else except point my feet straight ahead. And I said, Kestrel, jump tunnel. Perfect. Little tiny things that we do influence our dogs in ways we just don't even notice.
I think all of that is really good information. And especially the part that resonates is just being able to work with the animal that you have in front of you and being able to understand that it is a multifaceted objective that you're trying to do. You're trying to communicate with your animal without having the direct words and language to have a conversation. You're trying to open up that channel of communication. You also had mentioned to me the idea of cooperative training. So is that what you consider T-Touch, or is that all of these things that you've been talking about? Are there other examples?
Training is, there's a couple of things that led up to it. So there's a thing called shaping, where you break down something like teaching your dog to roll over into really small steps. If your dog doesn't even know how to go down yet, so you're going to start with the sit, and then you're going to teach him to sphinx lie down, and then you're going to teach him to lay on one side, and then you're going to teach him to lay on his back, and then you're going to teach him to lay on the other side. And eventually you put that all together and your dog will do the roll over. What you're doing is progressively marking each of those behaviors that's closer to the end result. And you're marking that with a good boy, a clicker, or food. The good thing about that is that people think that this really helps create a thinking dog because they know, okay, I'm sitting. Okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Are we going to down? Are we going to side lie? They're trying to plan ahead. Until the last 30 years, we didn't even know dogs could do that. That's supposed to create a thinking dog. And when you have cooperative training, your dog is thinking. The other thing that we can do, and I did a lot of this, and it's really hard to undo it, is luring, where you just use the food. And so I didn't know how to train agility, but this little guy wanted to do
he's
agility.
Getting gray now.
Yeah. So in the backyard, I just had some treats in my hand and I ran next to the jumps and said, jump, 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 and threw a treat through the tunnel. And he learned to do agility. And it was quite a bit of work to undo that because he's very treat driven as a result of that. And people say that luring doesn't really allow the dogs to think. There's 4 stages of training that we need to look at, which is acquisition. That's when you learn the thing. Fluency, when you can do it frequently and well. And then you got generalization, socializing. So I've taken my dog that I've trained to roll over. Okay, can I teach him to roll over and stay upside down and play dead? And then you get maintenance, where you're going to practice every day, a little bit of roll over, a little bit of play dead. With Tristan, I did this with sit pretty. So he's sitting with his paws up. And then I taught him the behavior to go like this to wave. So then he had to go paws up and then wave. That's how one of the things he did on his elite performer test. It's good to know these stages of training. And because we want to give dogs choices, nobody wants to be mean to them. And where does that happen the most is in the vet office, where you've got 5 people holding him just to draw blood. Marty Becker came up with the idea of cooperative care. Actually, I think he just popularized it. And cooperative care is where you give dogs a choice. And this is how Brian Hare got his dogs in his studies to go and lay their chin on something. When they're looking away from the thing they're going to rest their chin on, you give them a treat. And then when they go over and put their chin down, you wait a minute. And when they look away, you give them a treat. So they're learning that looking away is what's rewarding them. But over time, they learn to put their chin in the little thing where he's going to do the MRI by giving them the treats a little bit after they do that. And there's a really good article in the Whole Dog Journal, I think it's June 2021, about teaching your dog using this idea of cooperative care training. It's something that works really well with a dog that you have to do a lot of grooming on and they don't like it, because they get a choice. When they are looking away from the thing, you ignore them. And then when they put their head on a chair or something, you brush them. And as soon as they look away, you stop. What does that really do is build trust. When the dog's saying, I'm not interested in this right now, and you stop, the dog's like, oh, she's listening to me. That's a step in the right direction, because that's giving the dog communication, and all training is communication. So with T-Touch, with cooperative training, and this is not a coined term that's popular yet, but we think about it this way. In T-Touch, we want to create a situation where the dog wants to be with us and they want to do what we ask them to do. All my dogs, I've always thought, every time I do something new with them, I've done a lot of stuff with my dogs, and I always say, oh my gosh, isn't it great how he wants to do this stuff with me? But really, it's just because they want to be with me. It's not like, Barn Hunt does have its own reward because there are rats, but all the other stuff I do, the dogs just do it because they want to be with us. So we look at how to make that thing that we're doing with them something that the dog wants to participate in. And the most simple thing is make it fun. Are you having fun when you're doing this? There was a great woman named Victoria Stillwell who did a study, she's a dog trainer, with the people at her office that day. And Gwen should try this at work and see what happens. She just treated them the way she'd treat dogs. Good girl, bring it, good, drop. And then the person would leave. Sit, wait, stay. At the end of the day, people felt like she was mad at them. And she did it in a bit of a subtle way, so it wasn't so obvious. But a couple of people wanted to quit at the end of the day. Linda Tellington and many of us read this and thought, you know what, this is not how we treat our friends. Why would we treat our dogs this way? So Linda always asks us to say please and thank you. Well, guess what? When you say please and thank you, you almost smile. So smiling is a big part of making it fun. And I've been scolded by many of my trainers when I say, Tristan, sit please. Because they're like, don't beg him to sit, just insist. And I'm like, I don't want to insist. I want him to do it because he loves it, not because I insist. So at home, it's still, Tristan, sit please, come please, heel please, thank you, when you're done. These are simple things, but we forget, and it's a good way to treat your friends and your dogs. The other thing is to have a really happy voice. Come with me. And I notice this when I've been at shows and people are doing rally, because you can talk to your dog in rally. The dog goes around with you and you do things at signs. There's 15 of them on a course, and they're like, sit, make a circle, come in front, come back to the left side, go around the right side. So you're talking to your dog the whole time. And there are certain people that, I'll be sitting there reading my program and my ears prick up and I'm like, who is that lady? And so many times it's one of my friends with this high, happy voice, like, come, good girl, come with me. Nice girl. Okay, that was good. Let's go on to the next one. You just want to go with them. The happy voice is a big part of it.
And I will say that's interesting that you mentioned that, because the 2 dogs that I have Mila and Marlo, and Mila is such a sensitive soul. Even though I have not ever been mean to her, if I do not ask her to come to me in a really happy, pleasant voice, she will assume that she's in trouble and run the opposite direction, just because she's a rescue. She probably has some previous trauma. Even if if I'm feeling frustrated with something else that has nothing to do with my dogs, if I call Marlo, he's just happy to come to me. I could say it in a completely angry tone and he's going to bounce over to me because he's just happy that I want him in my presence. Mila, on the other hand, I have to make sure that my tone and how I ask her to come to me is very positive, because she will tuck her tail and run the opposite direction. If I'm like, Mila, come, I'd be like, come here, Mila. It's okay. You're not in trouble. You're still a good girl. And she'll come running over to me all happy.
And anyone who has had a dog run away in a situation where you're nervous, you're near a big road, or the gate's left open by the kid, or the kid's left the door of the house open, and you're like, Fluffy, come, Fluffy. The last thing the dog's going to do is come to you. You got to make it fun. You got to like get them to run with you, or I'll never forget my friend Sue was walking a husky and she fell down. The husky pulled her over in the snow and ice. And Sue actually, I think, herniated a disc that day. But the husky, huskies, they'll run for 20 days. You may not see that dog again if you don't get her back. She immediately crouched down on the ground and started digging in the snow going, come, Dancer, come here. Look what I have. Oh. And that husky was like, oh, and came right back. And Sue was like, pounced on the leash and got her. That making it fun and having that happy voice. And one of the ways I catch my puppy, because, he's at a 1-year-old stage and doesn't really want to come, is even now I've got snow out there. I can throw snowballs for him to come, or I can throw a stick up into the little paddock area and then I can get him there. It's always good. Like one of the things I do is have a little can of treats and rattle it, and then they know they're going to get fed, but the puppy doesn't care about food. Your tone of voice makes a huge difference. And so it's really important that you make training your dog like the funnest part of your day. For a lot of people, that 5 minutes can be work. My friend Karen does dog dancing, and she trains with her dogs hours a day, and she is just so fun and happy and positive and silly and giggly that you just want to do it with her. I want to move to Virginia just so I can spend my day with Karen training dogs. We do a T-touch heart hug where we do a circle and a quarter over our heart and take a deep breath. And that really can connect us with our dog so that we can have the best hour of our life or 5 minutes of our life with our dog. And then the next thing is, and we've talked about this, is noticing the small things like your tone of voice, your posture. Like yesterday, we were at rats hunting and they have to tunnel and climb. I was bending over in front of a tunnel. I don't know why, forcing my hands through the tunnel saying, go tunnel. And he just wanted to bite my arm because he thought we were playing like that cat, and the trainer said, is there a reason why you're bending over? And I was like, oh my God. So I stood up, went around the other side, got 6 feet away and said, go tunnel. Went right through. I mean, that's why you pay people to help you, is that they notice these small things. So many of us that have dogs from the horse world, in the old days, our lessons were somebody standing there yelling at you, heels down, sit up, hold your rein, where's your thumb? Send him this way. And you never really learned how to ride. And the same is true with some dog trainers. But the good trainers look at you and say, is there a reason why you're bending over? And it goes right down to even like where you're looking. Agility people, where you look makes such a difference in where your dog's going to go. If you're looking a jump ahead of where they are, then you're not helping your dog get there. One of the things that we do is draw a line of where we want them to go. Like in our mind, we're going to go jump, jump, tunnel. And you're very clear about that. And it makes a huge difference. And I've done lots of trial and errors where we try to do it wrong and do it right and see what happens with the same dog. It's very interesting. If you're asking your dog to heel, just imagine yourself in your mind with your dog healing perfectly, trotting by your side, laughing with you, and make it really fun. So your attitude even can have a big difference. And Gwen mentioned I do vibrational healing. And so part of it is even just the vibration that you're putting off. If you're having a terrible day and you're grumpy and just everything went wrong, you should not be spending time with the dog that you love if you're not your best self when you're with your dog. You want to notice all these little things that you are doing, even the language that you're using.
And I think it's fair to say that, I know I don't have that much experience with training, but just with my own dogs, it really does depend on the individual. There are some blanket statements that are true, but I treat both of my dogs differently. And if I want a desired behavior, I ask differently between my two dogs because they just think and they have completely different personalities. Do you think in general is true?
Oh yeah. Some dogs, like my puppy, if I were to be really happy and up and like over the top, like, yay, come on, give away. He gets so over the top, he can't think. With Tristan, it just animates him a little because he's an old guy and he's like, I know what I'm doing. I don't need too much help.
He needs a little zhuzh, yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen, their dogs, there's a Rottweiler, I think it is, that I've seen at some rally trials now. The lady's a really good trainer, really great dog. But when she is out there, she's so nervous. She so wants him to do well. He's one of her first dogs in her life. And he just goes slower and slower and slower as he goes around the course because she's getting tense. And then her trainer takes the dog out, and she's got corgi, so her whole demeanor is bright, happy. And she works with the dog a bit, and she's like, come on, come on. And the dog's like, trot, 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 trot. So it makes such a difference how you are with the individual dog, and yourself, how you are with yourself that day. Like, you have to show up the way that your dog needs you to be. And for some people, that can be really difficult to notice. One of the biggest things with cooperative training is your heart coherence with your dog. You should look up, if you haven't, the heart math, like mathematics, Heart Math Institute. They have tons of information there. And when you are in what we call heart coherence with your animal, basically your body rhythms and the dog's body rhythms are in sync. Their heartbeat is a little different from ours, but it will be in synchrony in a way. Like when I'm walking with Tristan, he takes like 4 steps to one of my steps. And boy, when we're going along and I'm taking a step and he's trot, trot, trot behind me, we are so together that I just like look over at him and I'm like, I love you so much. He looks up at me like, I'm so happy we're taking this walk. And it's like the best thing. We do a lot of these heart hugs, these circle and a quarter over our heart with a deep breath to achieve heart coherence with our dogs. We've got to really like be in your body, be where you are, and be where your dog is at in that moment. If I've got my puppy and he's all hyper and running around and I'm like, good boy, good boy. And then I bring myself down like, okay, Cass, come on, deep breath. Come down with him to that place where he can think and be with me. That makes a big difference. The heart coherence is a big part of it. Kestrel's like, yeah, I'm in here. Get me out today. The other thing, when you're asking your dog to do something, make it something that they actually can do. For instance, one of the things that's happened with Tristan since we've been going to obedience shows, but in rally and all the other things I do with him, I can talk to him. So I go in the ring and he's heeling perfectly next to me, and you have to do this like L-shaped pattern. And I don't say a thing the whole time, except after a sit, I'm allowed to say, Tristan, heel. And he's like, well, I am healing. I try to take deep breaths. I try to imagine heart hugs. And, it takes a lot of wherewithal in yourself to be at a show doing something with your dog when anything could go wrong, and try to take those deep breaths and imagine heart hugs. But you want to notice like when they're doing something that they can't do, like as obedience goes on and you do each exercise, you have to pass them all to pass. If it's hard, and it is, everybody has this problem, as each thing passes, you get more nervous on the next thing. And that starts to build up nervousness in your dog. You have to notice when the dog's afraid. Tristan, when he gets really nervous and rally from his trauma of obedience, he stops sitting. A lot of people immediately said, oh, is his back out? Is he in pain? He's an old dog. What's going on with his hips? Blah, blah, blah. But really, it's because he's afraid. When you're sitting, you're a little more vulnerable. He'll stop. He'll do everything perfectly, but he's in standing. I've registered that. It's not like he's a bad dog or he's not doing what I'm asking. He just can't do it because he's scared and he thinks he's being bad and he doesn't want to leave the ring necessarily, but he doesn't want to sit either. So you have to really make what you're doing doable for your dog. Notice if you're being unfair or unreasonable. Like if I'm training a dog, one of my guys out in the yard and the other guy's running around like a maniac playing, is that really fair to the dog I'm asking to pay attention to me to have this other guy running around? Not so much. So really look at the environment you're in. If I'm asking my dog to learn how to do a complex training thing and he's wanting to bark at the mailman, that's not really fair. He's not going to be able to pay attention. Look at all these little things and, like healing practice, try to do it in a place where it's quiet and peaceful. Like I've done a lot of healing in the backyard with Tristan to teach him how to heal off leash because there's a lot of stuff going on out there, but it's basically peaceful and quiet. What else is he going to do? He's going to run around and look for sticks. So he learned how to follow me around the yard. Now he does it all the time, even when I'm doing yard work. And even just asking a senior, if you're asking her to sit and she doesn't, is it because she's bad or stupid? No, maybe she's got back pain. Maybe she's got a subluxing patella. Maybe she's scared to sit because she's afraid the other dogs, which are bigger and younger, might hurt her. So she's going to stand so she can get away quick. You have to really look at the environment you're in too. Like part of showing dogs is putting them in more and more stressful environments. That's why you look at those 4 stages of training. They have to have generalization and maintenance so that you can go into a different environment and still have the same things go right. Another thing we do with cooperative training with T-touch are the T-touches. And the T-touches, again, they activate the 4 main brain waves equally on both sides of the brain. You can see, you can't really see it, but Tristan's yawning and he's starting to want to sit down on my lap, which isn't that comfortable. Just doing a couple of T-touches like this right now. He's like, oh, it really calms the dog down and puts them in a situation where they can learn. I love my friend Bernie Siegel. One of the things is to adjust your attitude. And he used to give people buttons that say attitude, and then he'd come up to them and change it a little and he'd say, your attitude needs adjusting. So, your attitude about training, oh, this is work. Oh, I don't know. I want my dog to win 100 things. Now, your attitude about training has to do, as Linda always says, what can we do to have fun together today? And if it's not what you thought you were going to do and it turns out to be something else, then that's what we're going to do. All of this stuff together builds trust. And it's like I said with my friend Tracy walking across the snakes. I trusted her absolutely to make sure nothing would happen to me. I know she's good with snakes. I know she's not afraid of them. I know they listen to her. And so I trust her. And that's how we want our dogs to feel about us. Like, I know that person will not ever let me get eaten by that big dog down the road. I know that my person will take care of me when I tell her I'm scared and I'm in a new place. I always think back to this woman I met at a horse training. She, like so many people, she's famous for taming wild horses. But one of the things she did with a really nervous one, when she brought it back, she observed that, there always had to be like a guard horse. And the same is true with the wolf packs, that somebody's got to be watching out so that the rest of us can have fun. And we can see this in every species pretty much. She went out and spent the whole day just sitting on a rock in the paddock with the mare. She got very upright and looked around and really moved her gaze around and was on watch. And at that point, the mare would graze. She might, after a couple of hours of like watching, and the mare would put her head up, she would like pretend she was sleeping and just kind of lay back on her hands and relax. And she noticed the mare looking around. And as soon as the mare started to graze again, she sat up and started to be on watch. And that was building trust. And with so many of these wild horse trainers, you can see there's some women, some sisters from Australia that are amazing. They just build trust with the horse. And then on the last day of the competition where they have to do all this stuff, everybody else saddles on the first day, they're riding them around. These girls do a lot of kind of T-touch type things where they're doing body work on the horse. They're exploring for any areas they have pain. They're massaging them. And on the last day, they often ride them without a saddle or a bridle, and they go through the obstacle course that they set up, and the horses are perfect because they trust that person. And they don't need to buck around the ring with a saddle because that person can ride them and ask them to do things, and the horse does it because they trust the person. That's what we want with our dogs. We don't want to violate that trust. What is T-touch? Tellington T-touch. It's a kind of animal work developed by the famous Linda Tellington. She's world renowned. And there's just parts of T-touch. There's the body work. There's our intention, which is what, that's really clear. You want to have in your head what you are intending. And then
people can go, you're hosting a T-touch class, right? That they can sign up on your website.
Yes, there's one on my website that you can take remotely.
Which is SallyMorganPT.com.
Yep. And then there's working on what we call a confidence course outside or in the house. And then we use wraps and different equipment. We have special harnesses and things that we use. So it's a whole comprehensive approach to animal work. And it's really a great experience. If you've never taken a T-touch course, Linda still teaches them. She lives in Florida. We do dog ones online periodically, which is really fun because the dog's in the house and you can, be working on your dog and I can say, oh, those touches look a little fast, slow down, or whatever. We have a bear T-touch, which is like fingernails in, really good for hot spots. Tristan's like, oh yeah, I like that one. A bear hug like this. I wish you could see his face because he's really good at showing this. Here, I'm going to hug him. Did you hear the groan he made? Look at his eyes. He's staring. He hates it.
Stop hugging me.
Nearly every dog does not like to be hugged. This is how a lot of children get bitten because it's very confining and it's very ownershipy in a way. Dogs are not like people. Dogs like to look at you. We found that oxytocin levels, which is the trust hormone, it's also the one that helps children bond with their mommies when they're newborns. If you just look at the dog gazing softly so that you're kind of focusing on his front feet and he's looking back at you and you just look at him and think, I love you, I love you, I love you. And your dog looks back. That is what dogs really like. Hugging them, not so much.
I will say that Mila loves to hug and she loves being little spoon. Like I think if I could carry her around in a baby carrier,
a baby snuggly,
any type of touching with me and Mila, she's about it. It could be my pinky finger, and I think she would.
Touching is very reassuring to dogs. They like that. The T-touches they love. They come over and ask for it. And T-touches can be used for a lot of health things as well, in addition to training. But it's powerful work. But it changes how you are with all the animals in your life. I actually have a TED Talk on my website about T-touch. It's worth watching if you'd like to learn more about it as well.
SallyMorganPT.com. And so that has the courses that you were talking about with the T-touch. You also mentioned you had a craniosacral course that
we've now got, as Dr. Judy has, I have on my website classes that you can take remotely on your own time. So there's a 4-day craniosacral therapy class for small animals. It's for dogs and cats. And we had some cats when I filmed it. So if you have a cat, this is a really good thing. That would be a great course for somebody who has an animal with some particular issues, somebody who wants to do animal massage, maybe a groomer. There's some techniques that are pretty easy to use to help calm an animal. It's a really comprehensive 4-day class with a lot of anatomy. And once we get a group of people that have taken it, we'll do like a little Sunday afternoon get together as a group and see how people are doing and answer questions and things. So that's on my website. And then there's a 1-day recording of a T-touch course that I did for small animals. You can take that as well.
Awesome. And we do have on drjudymorgan.com, we have your connection cards, and you have a book as well that goes along with these. If you could talk about what these are for a second.
So the book itself is called Dances of the Heart, Connecting with Animals. It's about my journey with T-touch and many other people I've worked with. Dr. Bernie Siegel, he's a famous cancer doctor. A lot of his work kind of overlaps with what I do. And so it was a really great meeting of the minds when I met him. Linda Tellington, of course, and I've worked with lots of really famous horse people, old judges, Max Gayweiler and some other people. Lyndon Gray, who's a famous Olympic rider, and my good friend Susan. There's many people in the book. So the book is interesting. I made it like little short chapters so that you could, for a busy person taking care of horses, you could read a 10-page chapter a night. It's got lots of pictures, and then, get your way through the book. It's got lots of stuff about dogs, but more towards the end. But everything about horses in the beginning could be the same for dogs. So the animal connection cards take that a step further. So there's 52 cards so that you can use them in a variety of ways. Some of my friends are using them in their puppy classes so that somebody can pick a card out of the pile at the end of the week, and it'll say something like, explore animal Reiki in your area. That person will go look up who Reiki practitioners are, what the heck is Reiki, why might my dog need it, and come back to class the next week and talk to people about it. Maybe they take their dog for a Reiki session. Some of them are a little more easy to do at home. Like it'll say, this is a Tellington heart hug. So it teaches you how to do a heart hug. You can look at how to do that on your animal as well. So there's 52 of them. You can do one a week over a year and just really focus on that one thing. Or one of my friends, like once a week, has her dog just pick a card and does what that card says. Some of them are just like fun, like sing a song to your dog, making up words about him to some popular song you like on the radio. So I love the song that they made after it blew. It's now called I'm So Good. So I'm like, you're so good. I'm having the best day of my life. You're so good. So I sing that to my dog. Some of them are just fun and silly like that, but a lot of them are really serious, like find a holistic vet in your area, explore raw feeding for your animal. Those are really helpful. And I think if you are able to do all 52 cards, it does enhance your relationship with your animal, because there's a lot of things in there that are going to really enhance your animal's life. For a dog like Gwen has, who's had some past trauma, a Reiki session might really help calm him and help him relate to her in a way that's more useful than what he might be doing.
Yeah, and there was a comment asking about the age that you can start this, and you can start this the minute that they're born.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, until like helping them transition at the very end. These are skills and classes and things that I think apply to any pet parent. We talked about in the beginning that this is helpful information if you're like me and you just have your dogs because you love them and you don't train them to do anything specific. They're just pets. Or if you are, a high level obedience or agility person, these are all skills that help you build the relationship and the level of communication and being able to help your pet through fear and yourself through fearful situations.
Don't forget the person, because
right, yeah, it also teaches the person a lot about being aware and how you are communicating and how you are asking for things and your level of expectation. I think that this is a very informative session on a complicated topic, so I really appreciate you joining us, willing to tackle the world of training, because is way more controversial and divisive than we realized.
That is true. Dog trainers are all very opinionated and often very strong-willed. Part of, and I have to mention this importantly, when you go to a trainer to help you work with your dog, don't be afraid to say no, or don't be afraid to say, you know what, that's not going to work for me. Can you come up with something else? Because you have to advocate for your dog. And it's very frustrating to her because, you know, so many trainers just want to do it their way, and they've done it this way for 100 years. And when you've got that crabby client saying, no, I don't want to do that. But you have to stick up for your dog. You know, do you want to be strangling your dog in class because some lady's abusing you? No, you've got to be able to say no. And I know Gwen and my mom walked out of a class once when a guy was being really mean to one of their dogs back in the days when we really had negative training all the time. So make sure that you are able to advocate for your dog.
Yeah, and I think it's important that all of our pets, just like us, they're individuals. And so you can take a lot of these things and tailor it to what works specifically for you and your pet. And if it doesn't feel right, then yeah, feel free to say, hey, this doesn't feel good. I'm going to look into something else, because there's so many things out there. There's wonderful people out there with wonderful information, you being one of them. And I definitely don't think that anybody has to feel forced into one specific type of handling or training. And there are a lot of people out there with some great resources.
Well, and one of the things I've loved about T-Touch over the years, like there was a horse farm around here, they wouldn't let any trainers in except their lady who taught there. But I could come because T-Touch, oh, what's that body work? But T-Touch is a system of training. It's a whole system of being with your animal. T-Touch overlaps everything. It is really powerful, and it does change how you are with your animal in the world. And the other thing I want to mention about my connection cards, they are only available from me and through Dr. Judy and her Amazon store. And I think we have, a couple hundred boxes. There weren't a ton of them left.
Yeah. SallyMorganPT.com has the courses that she was mentioning, more information on T-Touch, craniosacral therapy, the book, the cards. You can also go to drjudymorgan.com, but there's less information about the T-Touch and the therapy that she was talking about earlier.
And the other thing that you can get on Dr. Judy's website too that's really useful with training, and you should look at them if you haven't, are the botanical animal flower essences. Those can be really helpful with the old lady, you know, or if the dog is passing over. There's one called Safe Journeys or Safe Passage that you can use for, you know, when the dog is dying. There's Clear Thinking. There's one for, like, she's got that dog that's a rescue. There's one called Angel of Mercy, where they might not be learning very well because they've got this past trauma they need to release. Those are super effective assistances when you're training.
Awesome. That's great advice. All right. Thank you so much. We have the websites there if anybody needs to follow up. Again, I appreciate you so much for this wonderful hour of information. I think that people will be able to rewatch and gather more information even after this. If anybody has any questions, go to SallyMorganPT.com or drjudymorgan.com.